I discovered my daughter had legally removed my last name from her birth certificate and replaced it with her wealthy stepfather's. I didn't say a single word, I didn't yell, I didn't call, and I didn't text her. I just stopped paying for absolutely everything. 1 month later, she texted, "Dad, the college tuition is due." "I need rent," I only replied. "Ask your stepfather, I'm not your father anymore." Welcome to today's story. Before we dive deeper into this nightmare, go ahead and hit like if you're already hooked, and subscribe to stay updated on future episodes. Let me know in the comments which country or city you're joining from. I love hearing from you. Just a heads up, this narrative contains fictionalized elements designed for entertainment and deep reflection, but the excruciating lessons and themes explored here are very real and entirely relatable. When I found out what she'd done, I didn't beg. I didn't try to explain the profound depth of my pain. I just stopped. I stopped paying her absurdly expensive rent in Manhattan. I stopped covering her elite design school tuition. I stopped answering her frantic texts asking for money. 2 weeks later, her mother sued me in family court. 3 weeks after that, I won in court, watching their entire manipulative world crumble to dust. And now, at 53 years old, I am finally free. My name is Scott Lawson. I am a vice president of commercial banking at Truist, where I've worked tirelessly for 26 years. I live in a quiet townhouse in Lake Oswego, Oregon, a place I bought after my brutal divorce. A place that is finally entirely mine. I've got a good job, a steady, robust income, and a life that, for the first time in decades, doesn't violently revolve around someone else's selfish needs. But it wasn't always this peaceful. For 19 grueling years, I gave absolutely everything I had to my daughter, Ashley. I paid for her exclusive private high school. I paid for an extravagant Sweet 16 party at a vineyard outside Portland, a party that literally cost me more than most people spend on a luxury wedding. I paid for her dream college in New York City, a place where tuition alone could buy you a brand new car every single year. I did all of this because I loved her, because she was my daughter, because I believed, foolishly, that providing everything was exactly what good fathers do. And then, in February 2023, I found out she had deliberately erased my name from her official legal records and replaced it with her stepfather's. Not because I was abusive, not because I was an absent father, but because her mother manipulated her into it, and because it was financially convenient. Because Andrew Thompson, the man who had swooped into her life when she was 9, had money, social status, and a last name that apparently sounded infinitely better than mine. Her mother called me selfish. She called me a vindictive monster. She dragged my name through the mud to anyone who would listen, claiming I was abandoning my innocent daughter when she needed me the absolute most. But here is the cold, hard truth. Ashley wasn't my daughter anymore. Not legally, not on paper, not in her heart. She had made that deliberate, calculated choice herself. So I forced her to live with the agonizing consequences. The case made local news. People in our community had very loud opinions. Some said I was a hero for finally standing up for myself against toxic entitlement. Others said I was a heartless bastard for abandoning my own flesh and blood over just a name. But it wasn't just a name. It was 19 years of showing up, paying up, sacrificing my own future, and being ruthlessly pushed aside. It was 19 years of being systematically replaced, one cruel decision at a time, by a man who had everything I didn't: money, status, and my ex-wife's unwavering, adulterous loyalty. I spent over $800,000 on Ashley. I gave her everything I possibly could, and she gave me absolutely nothing in return. Not even the basic human courtesy of keeping my name. So I stopped. And you know what? I don't regret a single second of it. Today I am 53. I live in a beautiful home I own outright. I have a wonderful girlfriend, Diane, who loves me for exactly who I am, not for the digits in my bank account. I travel the world. I save aggressively. I sleep incredibly well at night, Ashley. She's 22 now. She works retail at Nordstrom in downtown Portland, making $19 an hour folding sweaters. She dropped out of her fancy New York design school the very second I stopped paying her way. She had to move back to Oregon, and now rents a cramped, depressing apartment in Beaverton with her mother. She is finally learning, the hard way, what it actually means to support herself. We see each other maybe twice a year, coffee, a quick lunch, nothing deep, nothing meaningful. She doesn't dare call me dad anymore, and I certainly don't ask her to. It is civil, it is icy, it is distant, and it is exactly the miserable reality she chose for herself. I'm not telling you this harrowing story to get your sympathy. I am not looking for external validation. I'm telling you this because I learned a devastating lesson over these past 3 years. Something I desperately wish I had known 19 years ago, before the financial and emotional bleeding started. Love without boundaries isn't love. It is enabling. It is pure self-destruction. It is literally handing someone the keys to your dignity and blindly hoping they will treat it with care. Let me tell you from bitter experience, they won't. If you are reading this right now, and you are a parent who has been endlessly funding a child's luxurious life while they disrespect you, ignore you, or treat you like nothing more than a walking checkbook, listen to me very carefully. You are not helping them. You are hurting both of you. I spent 19 agonizing years believing that if I just gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed my own happiness enough, my daughter would finally see me. That she would value me, that she would choose me. She didn't, and that is perfectly okay, because I finally chose myself. But this massive betrayal didn't just happen overnight. It didn't magically start in February 2023 when I accidentally found that legal name change document in a county clerk's office. It started decades earlier, rooted in a series of terrible, weak decisions I didn't even realize I was making. Decisions to say yes when I should have screamed no. Decisions to financially provide when I should have set unbreakable boundaries. Decisions to love without limits and pay the ultimate devastating price. To truly understand how I ended up sitting in a courtroom, defending my right to walk away from my own child, you need to know exactly where this nightmare began. Let me take you back to 1999. I met Karen at a Portland State University alumni event on a miserable, rainy October evening in 1999. It was the kind of typical Oregon night where the freezing drizzle soaked through your jacket before you even realized it was raining. I had almost skipped it entirely. Alumni mixers weren't my scene, but a college buddy had convinced me to show up. Free wine and networking, he had promised. What's the worst that could happen? Karen was standing near the appetizer table, laughing brightly with a group of women. She had this magnetic energy about her, warm, easy, the kind of person who instantly made everyone in the room feel comfortable. She was wearing a deep green sweater that perfectly matched her eyes. When she caught me staring from across the room, she didn't look away. She just smiled. That was how the trap was set. We talked for 2 solid hours that night. She told me she was an elementary school teacher at a Title I school in North Portland, working tirelessly with kids who desperately needed extra support. She loved it. You could hear the genuine passion in her voice, the way she lit up when she talked about her struggling students, about late-night lesson plans, about challenging parent-teacher conferences. We went on our first date a week later, dinner at a quiet little Italian place in downtown Portland. Then another date and another. By spring, we were completely inseparable. She moved into my modest apartment in Hillsborough that June. It was a simple 2-bedroom place near the massive Intel campus. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. We spent weekends hiking the trails of Forest Park or driving out to the Oregon coast. She would sit at the kitchen table grading papers while I worked on quarterly client reports. It was simple. It was good. 8 months after that alumni event, I bought a ring. We got married in a small, beautiful ceremony at her parents' church in Beaverton. Just family and close friends. I remember standing at the altar, watching her walk down the aisle, thinking, this is it. This is exactly what I've been waiting for my entire life. I was 26. She was 24. We had our whole lives ahead of us. The first few years were everything I thought a marriage should be. We worked hard. We saved aggressively. We planned for the future. We talked about buying a house, about starting a family. We agreed we wanted kids too, maybe 3. We would be the kind of parents who showed up for every single recital, every little league game. But trying for a baby turned out to be an agonizing nightmare. Month after month, nothing. Karen took it incredibly hard. Every negative test felt like a crushing personal failure. She would sit on the cold bathroom floor, staring blankly at the plastic stick, and I would hold her while she violently sobbed. I told her it would happen when it was supposed to. I didn't know what else to say. We saw expensive specialists. They ran endless invasive tests. Everything came back perfectly normal. Just keep trying, the doctors said with rehearsed sympathy. Sometimes it just takes time. By late 2003, we had stopped talking about it entirely. It became this massive, unspoken weight crushing the air out of our marriage, this desperate thing we both wanted, but couldn't control. And then, in early 2004, a miracle happened. Karen woke me up on a freezing Saturday morning in February, holding a pregnancy test. Her hands were shaking violently. The little window showed two unmistakable pink lines. "We're having a baby," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I don't think I have ever felt pure joy like that in my entire life. Ashley Marie Lawson was born on March 14, 2004, at 6:47 a.m. at Providence Portland Medical Center, 6 pounds, 9 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a full head of dark hair just like Karen's. When the exhausted nurse finally placed her in my arms, I felt something fundamentally shift deep inside my soul. I had spent years meticulously building a career, buying nice things, climbing the corporate ladder. But holding my daughter for the very first time, that was the first moment in my life that felt like it actually meant something real. I made a silent vow to her right there in that sterile hospital room. I promised I would always be there for her. I promised I would give her everything I didn't have growing up. I promised she would never, ever doubt how much she was unconditionally loved. I meant every single word. The next few years were pure chaos in the best possible way. Endless diapers, sleepless nights, first words, stumbling first steps. Karen stayed home for the first year, then went back to work part-time as an education consultant. I worked relentlessly and got promoted to senior VP. We were making very good money. I was pulling in around $190 a year, and she was making $68. Combined, we were extremely comfortable. It felt like absolutely everything was falling into perfect place. But somewhere around late 2008, things started to subtly, dangerously shift. It started small. Karen started working longer hours. She would stay late at the district office for urgent meetings or trainings. She started coming home exhausted, completely distracted. I told myself it was just the job. Education consulting was demanding, and she was stressed. Then came the late-night phone calls. She would abruptly step outside to take them, claiming it was a worried parent or a needy coworker. She would keep her voice low, hushed, even when she thought I wasn't listening. I would ask who it was, and she would quickly wave it off. Just work stuff. I believed her. I desperately wanted to believe her. By 2009, she was regularly coming home past 9:00 p.m. Some nights, Ashley would already be fast asleep. I would sit in the living room watching meaningless TV, waiting in the dark. She would walk in, give me a cold, obligatory kiss on the forehead, and go straight to the shower. "Long day," I'd ask. "You have no idea," she'd sigh. I didn't press her. I should have pressed her, but I didn't want to start a fight. Then came a freezing night in January 2010. I was putting Ashley to bed. She was almost 6, stalling as usual, asking for one more story, one more glass of water. Suddenly, I heard Karen's phone buzz violently on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower. I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass. The screen lit up in the dark room. "Andrew, can't wait to see you tomorrow. I've been thinking about you all day." I stood there, frozen, staring at the glowing message. My brain scrambled, trying to make sense of the impossible. Andrew, who the hell was Andrew? I picked up the phone. I shouldn't have. I knew it was a violation of trust, but I didn't care. I swiped it open and scrolled through their conversation. It wasn't just a few texts. It was weeks, months, maybe longer, highly flirtatious messages. Explicit plans to meet up at cheap hotels, photos I never ever wanted to see. She had been sleeping with him since at least the summer. When Karen finally came out of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around her dripping hair, I was sitting dead, still at the kitchen table, her phone clutched in my hand. She saw my face. The color instantly drained from hers. She knew. "Scott," she breathed. Her voice trembling, I held up the phone, my hand shaking with pure, unadulterated rage. "Who the hell is Andrew?" She didn't answer, she just stood there, completely frozen, staring at the phone like it was a loaded gun. "Who is Andrew?" My voice was dangerously low, a primal growl building in my chest. "He's someone from work," she whispered, her eyes locked on the floor. "From work," I nodded, the betrayal tasting like battery acid in my mouth. "How long, Karen? Please do not lie to me, how long?" She squeezed her eyes shut. 6 months, 6 months. I confronted her brutally that night. She didn't bother denying it anymore. The dam had broken. She told me his name, Andrew Thompson. 40 years old, extremely wealthy owner of 5 restaurant franchises across the Portland metro area. Panera-bred locations, all of them highly successful. He had hired Karen's consulting firm to help train his management staff on conflict resolution. That's exactly how they met. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she cried, sitting on the edge of our bed, still wrapped in that damp towel, looking pathetic. "It just did." I stood in the doorway, staring at the woman I had promised my life to. I wanted to yell. I wanted to throw something through the window. I wanted answers that would somehow make this nightmare make sense. But all I felt was a cold, suffocating numbness. "You've been lying to my face for more than half a year," I said, my voice dead. "Do you love him?" She didn't answer right away. That agonizing silence told me absolutely everything I needed to know. "I don't know," she finally choked out. "But I know I'm not happy here anymore. Not happy." That was what it all came down to. 11 years of marriage, a beautiful daughter we had fought so hard to have, a house we had built into a home, and she just wasn't happy. "Then we're entirely done," I said. She looked up at me, shocked, like she genuinely expected me to fight for her, to get on my knees and beg her to stay. But I couldn't, because the very moment I read those texts, something inside my soul permanently broke. It wasn't just my marriage I was losing, it was the absolute destruction of my family. I moved out of the master bedroom that exact night. I slept on the couch, in the living room, staring blankly at the ceiling until the sun came up. Ashley found me there in the morning, tugging gently on my sleeve, asking in her innocent little voice why I wasn't in bed with Mommy. "Daddy's just tired, sweetheart," I lied, pulling her into a desperate hug. She wrapped her tiny arms around my neck. She smelled like strawberry shampoo. I wanted to die. I filed for divorce exactly 2 weeks later. Oregon is a no-fault state, which meant I didn't have to legally prove Karen was a cheating adulterer. I didn't have to drag Andrew Thompson into court or air our dirty laundry in front of a judge. I just had to check a box stating the marriage was irretrievably broken. That was it, my lawyer, a sharp, pragmatic guy named Paul Jackson, told me to heavily brace myself for the impending custody battle. "Judges in Oregon heavily favor the primary caregiver," he warned me, sitting across his mahogany desk. "And that's Karen. She's a teacher. She has a stable, predictable schedule. You're in commercial banking. You travel for work. That's going to count massively against you." "I am her father," I argued, my blood boiling. "I have provided everything for this family, I know." Paul sighed. "But family court doesn't give a damn about fairness. It cares about stability. And Karen's going to aggressively argue that stability means staying with her in the family home." He was entirely right. Karen's lawyer ruthlessly filed for sole physical custody. I would get standard visitation every other weekend, alternating holidays. That's it. 2 days out of every 14, I fought it. God, I fought it with everything I had. I showed up to every excruciating mediation session. I brought endless records proving I was financially stable, that I could easily provide for Ashley, that I had been a deeply involved father since the minute she was born. I practically begged. I offered to cut back on travel, to take a lesser role at the bank, to do whatever it took if it meant more time with my daughter. But Karen's lawyer painted me beautifully as the absent, workaholic dad. The guy who was supposedly never home for dinner, who missed recitals because of important client meetings, who selfishly put his career above his family. It was a complete distortion of the truth, but it was close enough to stick in court. In February 2011, the judge made her devastating ruling. Karen was awarded primary physical custody. I would get Ashley every other weekend, Friday evening through Sunday evening, and alternating holidays. I was ordered to pay $3,600 a month in child support, strictly based on Oregon's income guidelines. "Mr. Lawson," the judge said, looking down at me over her reading glasses with absolute authority. You will still have the opportunity to be an active father in your daughter's life. But given the circumstances, this arrangement serves Ashley's best interest. I nodded numbly. What else could I possibly do? The divorce was finalized on March 18, 2011. 11 years of marriage, completely erased by a single signature. I vividly remember the day I had to tell Ashley I was moving out. She was 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, happily coloring a picture of a house. I sat down across from her, my heart physically aching, trying to find the right, impossible words. "Hey, kiddo," I said, my voice thick. "I need to talk to you about something important." She looked up, crayons still clutched in her small hand. "What? You know how mommy and daddy have been different lately." She nodded slowly. "Kids always know far more than you think. Well, we've decided that daddy's going to live in a different house for a while. But you will still see me all the time, okay? Every other weekend. We'll have our own special time together. Just you and me." Her little face completely crumpled. "Why?" "Because sometimes grown-ups just need space," I said, violently hating myself for how pathetic and vague it sounded. "But it doesn't change how much I love you. You know that, right?" She didn't answer. She just crawled into my lap, buried her face in my chest, and cried. I held her tight for a long, agonizing time. I didn't know what else to do. 2 weeks later, I moved into a 3-bedroom townhouse in Lake Oswego. It was much smaller than the Hillsborough house, but it was entirely mine. No shared mortgage, no haunting memories of Karen coming home late, smelling like someone else's expensive cologne. Karen aggressively kept the house, the one we had bought together, the one with Ashley's lavender bedroom and the backyard swing set I had assembled with my own 2 hands. She kept most of our furniture too. I didn't even fight her on it. I just desperately wanted out of the toxicity. The heavy child support kicked in immediately. $600 a month, due faithfully on the first of every single month. It was calculated purely based on my high income and the state's rigid guidelines. Fair according to the court, painful according to my bank account. But I paid it every month, exactly on time, without a single word of complaint. Because Ashley was my daughter, and no matter what Karen had done to destroy us, no matter how much it hurt, I was never going to let Ashley suffer for our mistakes. The first weekend Ashley came to stay with me. She cried hysterically when Karen dropped her off. She didn't want to leave her mom. She didn't want to sleep in a strange, unfamiliar bed. She didn't understand why her entire world had fundamentally changed. I had meticulously set up her new room with all her favorite things. Her stuffed animals, her nightlight, the worn blanket she'd had since she was a baby. I made her favorite pancakes for breakfast. I let her pick whatever movie she wanted. I tried so incredibly hard to make it feel normal, but it wasn't normal. It was every other weekend. It was scheduled. It was court-ordered visitation. I naively told myself I would still be her father, that I would still be there for every milestone, every scraped knee, every bad dream. That absolutely nothing would change between us. I had no idea how horribly wrong I was. The first weekend after the divorce, I showed up at the Hillsborough house exactly at 5 p.m., just like the rigid custody agreement demanded. Karen answered the door. Ashley was standing behind her, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Hey, kiddo," I said, crouching down to her level, forcing a bright smile. "You ready to come see my new place?" She shook her head. Tears were already streaming down her face. "I don't want to go," she whispered. Karen knelt beside her, playing the role of the comforting mother perfectly. "It's just for the weekend. Sweetie, Daddy's going to bring you back Sunday night." I held out my hand. Ashley reluctantly took it, but she didn't let go of Karen. She looked back at her mother as I walked her to the car, staring at her like she was being forcibly taken away from her real home. That was the exact moment I realized a terrifying truth. To her, she was being taken away. After the divorce, I was rapidly reduced to the weekend dad. 2 Saturdays a month, if I was extremely lucky. Every other weekend, I would pick Ashley up on Friday evening and drop her off Sunday night. 48 hours once every 2 weeks, that was all I got. I missed her crucial first day of 2nd grade. I missed her school play where she proudly played a tree. I missed the day she lost her very first tooth. I missed absolutely everything that happened in the wide, empty spaces between our scheduled visits. Karen would occasionally send me photos. Ashley in her Halloween costume. Ashley at a friend's birthday party. Ashley holding up a spelling test with a shiny gold star. But I wasn't there to celebrate. I was just the guy who got text updates. I paid my heavy child support on time. Every month. $600 automatically deducted from my paycheck. But providing financially is not the same as being present. By 2013, Ashley was 9 years old. That was when Karen casually told me she was getting remarried. "His name's Andrew," she said over the phone, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "Andrew Thompson. Ashley really likes him." I officially met him 3 weeks later, when I showed up for my weekend visitation. The modest Hillsborough house was gone. They had moved to an exclusive gated community in Lake Oswego, a massive, sprawling 5-bedroom house with a pristine pool, a private tennis court, and a 3-car garage. The kind of place that easily cost $1.4 million. Andrew answered the massive oak door, tall salt and pepper hair, wearing the kind of practiced, perfectly white smile you only see on politicians or salesmen. "You must be Scott," he said, shaking my hand with a firm, dominant grip. "I'm Andrew. Good to finally meet you." He turned his head. "Ashley, your dad's here." She came happily running down the stairs. She barely even looked at me. "Bye, Uncle Andrew," she said, giving him a massive, tight hug. Uncle Andrew, that was what she called him. Over the next few years, Andrew became an immovable fixture in Ashley's life. He started coaching her youth volleyball team. Suddenly, she was excitedly texting me updates about important games I wasn't even invited to. "Uncle Andrew says I'm getting really good at serving." He drove her to school most mornings in his luxury SUV. He picked her up most afternoons. When I would desperately ask about her day during our weekends, she would constantly mention things Andrew had said, expensive places they had gone, inside jokes they shared. Uncle Andrew took me to get frozen yogurt after practice. Uncle Andrew helped me with my math homework. I faithfully kept showing up for my every other weekend visits. I kept paying my $600 a month without fail, but I wasn't part of her daily life anymore. I was rapidly becoming the guy who took her to the movies twice a month. In 2014, Ashley started high school at Jesuit High School, one of the most elite, expensive private schools in Portland. Tuition was a staggering $500 a year. Karen called me 2 weeks before school started. "Ashley got into Jesuit," she said happily. "We're really excited, but tuition is very expensive. I know the divorce agreement doesn't legally require you to pay for private school, but..." "I'll pay it," I interrupted. So I added another $975 a month to my tightening budget. $600 for child support, plus $975 for tuition. That was $4,575 bleeding out of my account every single month. But it wasn't about the money. It was about making sure Ashley had every possible opportunity. Making sure she knew I was still there, providing, even if I wasn't physically there. Except she didn't notice, or she didn't care. I showed up for her very first volleyball game at Jesuit. I sat high in the bleachers, anxiously scanning the crowd for her. When I spotted her on the court, she was laughing joyfully with her teammates. I waved excitedly. She didn't see me. After the game, she walked right past the bleachers, climbing into Andrew's sleek car with Karen. They drove off before I could say a single word. I texted her later. "Great game today. Kiddo, you were amazing," she replied 3 hours later. "Thanks, one word." By 2015, I had completely stopped going to her games. She never once asked why. I would see her posts on Instagram photos of her and Andrew sitting courtside at Trailblazers games, at expensive beach resorts on the coast, at fancy restaurants downtown. She tagged him in every single photo. She never tagged me. When Jesuit sent home emergency contact forms, I saw that Andrew Thompson was listed proudly as the primary contact. Not me. "Why is Andrew your emergency contact?" I asked her one weekend, trying to hide the hurt in my voice. She shrugged dismissively. "He's the one who picks me up from school." It just made sense. It made sense. By 2016, she had started routinely canceling our weekends with thin excuses. "I have a volleyball tournament. I have a massive project due. I'm going to a friend's lake house." Karen would call to apologize on her behalf, her tone condescending. "You know how busy teenagers are." I knew. I just didn't know how to stop the bleeding. Every month I wired 575s to Karen's account. Every month I got less and less time with my daughter. In January 2020, Ashley called me. She didn't call often anymore. Most of our communication was sterile logistics through Karen. So, when I saw her name pop up on my phone screen, my foolish heart jumped. Maybe she actually missed me. "Hey, Dad," she said. Her voice was bright, electric with excitement. "I wanted to ask you about something, of course, kiddo." "What's up?" "So, my 16th birthday is coming up in March, right?" "Of course I do." "Well, Mom and Uncle Andrew said we could do something really special for my sweet 16. Like a massive party. And I was thinking, can we do it at Ponzi Vineyards?" Ponzi Vineyards, an exclusive breathtaking winery in the rolling hills outside Portland. The kind of elite venue where weddings cost more than most people's cars. "That sounds amazing, Ash," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "How big are we talking?" "Like 200 people, my friends from school, Mom's side of the family, some of Uncle Andrew's friends." "It'll be so incredible, Dad, and I really, really want you to be there." She wanted me to be there. I held on to that desperately. "Let me talk to your mom about the details," I said. "But if that's what you want, we'll absolutely make it happen." "Really? Oh my God, thank you, Dad. You're the best." She hung up, and I sat there in my living room, staring at my phone. She had called me the best. When was the last time she had said that? 2 days later, Karen emailed me a spreadsheet. "Sweet 16 budget, Ashley Lawson." I opened it, and my stomach violently dropped to the floor. Venue rental at Ponzi Vineyards. $750 catering for 200 guests. $15,500. DJ and sound system. $4,500. Photographer and videographer. $5,500. Floral arrangements and decor. $10. Custom Sweet 16 dress. Party favors. $8,000. Nice invitations. $530. Miscellaneous valet, cake, etc. Total $77,500. $77,500 for one single party. I stared at the absurd number, completely paralyzed. I did the brutal math in my head. My salary was good, yes, but after punishing taxes, my mortgage, and the $4,575 I was already bleeding every month for Ashley, I didn't have $77,500 lying around in cash. I called my bank. I swallowed my pride and asked about a massive personal loan. They approved me for $77,500 at 6.5% interest, to be paid back over a grueling 18 months. That came out to roughly $5,000 a month in loan payments. $5,000 a month, completely on top of the $4,575s I was already paying. I was approaching $10,000 a month, just to fund the illusion that I was still her father. I sat at my kitchen table, calculator in front of me, wondering how the hell I had gotten here. But then I remembered Ashley's voice on the phone. "You're the best, Dad." I desperately convinced myself that this was how I would get her back. I signed the loan papers. The party was set for late January, 2 full months before her actual birthday, just so it wouldn't conflict with Andrew's spring break plans. The day of the party, I drove out to Ponzi Vineyards completely alone. I handed my keys to a valet and walked in. I felt pathetically underdressed in my sport coat, while most of the guests wore expensive cocktail attire. I didn't recognize half of them. Karen and Andrew were standing regally near the entrance, greeting people like royalty holding court. "Scott," Karen said, her smile incredibly tight. "Glad you could make it." Andrew clapped me patronizingly on the shoulder. "Ashley's going to be so happy you're here." I found a lonely seat near the back. The space was packed with 200 people, just like she had said. Friends of Andrew's, people who didn't even know I was Ashley's real father. At Sick P, the DJ loudly announced her arrival. She walked in wearing the floor-length pale pink gown I had helped finance. She looked beautiful. She looked completely grown up. And Andrew walked right beside her, his arm linked proudly with hers. Karen followed a step behind, beaming. Ashley smiled, waving at the crowd. Andrew led her to the center of the room. The DJ started the music, and Ashley gave a short, glowing speech thanking everyone for coming, explicitly thanking her mom and Uncle Andrew for making the day so special. She didn't mention my name once. Dinner was served. I sat at a table of total strangers, smiling and nodding, barely touching my expensive food. Then came the ultimate humiliation. The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers, and now, We invite Ashley and her father to the dance floor for a special moment. My heart jumped. I stood up, but Andrew was already walking toward Ashley. She eagerly took his hand. She smiled brightly up at him. The opening notes of My Girl started playing, and they stepped onto the dance floor together. I stood there, frozen halfway out of my chair. Andrew spun Ashley gently, and she threw her head back and laughed. Karen stood off to the side, weeping tears of joy. I sat back down in the dark. Nobody even noticed. When the song ended, Ashley hugged Andrew fiercely. He kissed the top of her head. She never once looked in my direction. I stayed until the very end, because I didn't know what else to do. I finally cornered Ashley near the exit. "Hey, Ash," I said carefully. "Great party, you looked beautiful tonight." "Heh, thanks." She glanced nervously over her shoulder, where Andrew and Karen were waiting by his Mercedes. I have to go, but thanks for coming. And for everything, of course," I said, my chest hollow. "I'm proud of you, kiddo." She gave me a quick, stiff hug, the kind you give to a distant relative you barely tolerate, and then she was gone, running back to Andrew. I stood in the freezing parking lot, watching them drive away. I had just spent nearly $80,000 to watch another man act as my daughter's father. I was completely reduced to a checkbook. In spring 2021, Ashley actually called me, not to catch up, but to share massive news. "Dad," her voice was absolutely electric. "I got into Parsons School of Design in New York. One of the most elite fashion programs in the entire country." "Ashley, that's incredible," I said, meaning it. "I'm so proud of you, thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." For a split second, I held on to those words like a lifeline. "So," she continued quickly, "I know it's incredibly expensive, but Mom said you and Andrew could split the costs." "I promise I'll work hard. This is my absolute dream, Dad." I told her we would figure it out. She yelled that she loved me and hung up. 2 days later, Karen emailed me the brutal financial breakdown. Tuition, housing, and living expenses added up to over $6,500 a month. I was still paying $3,600 in child support. I was still paying $5,000 for the Sweet 16 loan. I would be bleeding over $15 a month. My take-home pay was only $12. I called my financial advisor. He bluntly told me I was disastrously over-leveraged. "You'll have no cushion, no emergency fund. If you do this, you are completely underwater." "I know," I said, but I was absolutely terrified that if I stopped paying, I would lose her completely. So, I completely gutted my savings and wired the massive deposit to Parsons. In August 2021, Ashley moved to New York. I offered to fly out and help her move, but Karen coldly informed me that Andrew had already rented a U-Haul and was making a fun weekend trip out of it. "It's all taken care of." Karen sneered, so I stayed alone in Oregon. Ashley texted me photos of her Manhattan dorm room. She looked so happy. I wired the first month's payment of $6,500 the very next day. I desperately told myself it was worth it, that this was an investment in her brilliant future, that someday she would finally look back and realize the massive sacrifices I had made for her. I lied to myself. By October, her texts became less frequent. By November, she only bothered to contact me when rent was due. Her Instagram feed was filled with trendy Sunday brunches in Soho, gallery openings in Chelsea, and glamorous Fashion Week events. She looked like she belonged in that elite world, but I was nowhere in it. She never tagged me. She never thanked me publicly. She only ever called when something went wrong. "Dad, can you Venmo me $300? My laptop died. I sent it without asking a single question. In December, Parsons sent home the financial guarantor paperwork. I opened the envelope. Under Emergency Contact Primary, it said Andrew Thompson. Under Relationship, it boldly stated stepfather. I was paying $6,500 every single month for her to live in New York, and when something went wrong, the school was instructed to call Andrew, not me. On January 14, 2022, my phone rang at 6:30 a.m. It was a nurse from Providence Portland Medical Center. My mother, Ruth Lawson, had suffered a massive, sudden heart attack. She was gone. I drove to the hospital completely in a daze. My mom was 83. We had just had dinner 2 weeks ago. I called Ashley from the freezing hospital parking lot. "Hey, Dad," she answered, sounding completely distracted. I could hear her friends laughing in the background. "Ash, I need to tell you something." Grandma passed away this morning. There was a long pause. Oh my God, what happened? Heart attack. It was very sudden. The funeral is next Friday. Can you fly home? Another pause, much longer this time. Dad, I have massive midterms next week. I can't miss them. It's my first semester. It's your grandmother's funeral, Ashley, I said, my voice cracking. I know, and I feel terrible, but Grandma would understand, right? She always said education comes first. I sat in my car, staring blankly at the hospital entrance. Right, I whispered. I'll send flowers, she offered cheaply. I'm really sorry, Dad. I hung up. I buried my mother completely alone. Tyler Green showed up, a few elderly neighbors. That was it. No Ashley. The modest flower arrangement arrived that morning with a generic card. Love, Ashley. That night, sitting alone in my empty townhouse, I logged into my bank account and obediently wired her February rent. She texted me an hour later. Got it. Thanks, Dad. No mention of the funeral. No asking how I was holding up. Just thanks, Dad. I buried my mother alone. And I kept aggressively funding the Manhattan lifestyle of a daughter who didn't even care. I didn't know it then, but by January 2023, Karen had been aggressively pressuring Ashley for months. I was still blindly paying $10 every single month, $6,500 for Parsons, $1,500 for her Manhattan rent, and $2,000 for living expenses. I thought everything was perfectly fine. I had absolutely no idea what toxic manipulation was happening 3,000 miles away. It was mid-January during Ashley's winter break. She was back in Oregon, staying in Lake Oswego with Karen and Andrew. I had asked if she wanted to grab lunch, but she brushed me off, claiming she was too busy catching up with Mom and Andrew. What she didn't tell me was that Karen had called a highly calculated family meeting. I only learned the sickening details of this much later, during the explosive trial. Karen sat Ashley down at the kitchen table. Andrew was conveniently at work. Ashley. Karen started, her tone serious. We need to talk about school. Parsons is costing your father a lot of money. Andrew and I have been talking. Andrew is willing to help. He wants to contribute massively to your tuition, but there is a firm condition. What condition? Ashley asked. Karen slid a legal document across the table. He will only pay for family. His family. Ashley stared at the paper. It was a name change petition for Clackamas County. At the top it read, Petition for Change of Name Adult. You want me to change my last name? Ashley asked, stunned. To Thompson? Yes, Karen demanded, her voice hardening. Because Andrew has been far more of a father to you than Scott ever was. He's the one who raised you. If you want to finish Parsons, you need to show him you are fully committed to this family. Does Dad know about this? Ashley asked, feeling sick. Karen didn't even blink. He will eventually. Let's not make it complicated. You're 19. Ashley, you're an adult. You can make your own decisions. But won't Dad have to sign? Not anymore, Karen lied smoothly. It's your choice. I don't know, Mom. Ashley hesitated, pushing the paper back. This feels incredibly wrong. Karen's expression turned instantly cold and manipulative. Do you want to finish your elite design school or not? Of course I do. Then sign the damn paper. Your father will never even know. It's just paperwork. It doesn't change who you are. Ashley picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking. She signed her birth name, Ashley Lawson. Then in the box below, she wrote her brand new identity, Ashley Thompson. Karen pulled the paper back, looking incredibly satisfied. She notarized it herself, using her education consultant license. 2 weeks later, she quietly filed it with the Clackamas County Clerk's office. Ashley flew back to New York, desperately trying to convince herself it was just meaningless paperwork. But the guilt gnawed at her. She Googled Oregon name change laws. The first result from the Judicial Department explicitly stated, if the petitioner is 18 years or older, they may file a name change petition without parental consent. She realized instantly that her mother had manipulated the truth. Her dad hadn't been part of this decision at all. He had been completely bypassed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Karen. Did you tell your father about the name change? Ashley typed back, no, good, let's keep it that way. Ashley stared at her phone. She could call me right then. She could explain everything, apologize, and tell me how Karen had cornered her. But she didn't, because she was terrified that if I found out she had erased my name, I would furiously cut off the money. and she couldn't afford to lose her $60 thousand a year tuition or her trendy Manhattan apartment. So she set her phone down. She chose the money over her father. The very next day, my massive $6,500 payment went through as usual. She texted me, "Thanks, Dad." She went to her elite classes. She posted photos of herself drinking cappuccinos in the West Village. She didn't say a single word. In February 2023, I drove to the Clackamas County Clerk's office to formally file my late mother's probate paperwork. It was a miserable, gray, drizzling day. I walked up to the counter and handed the folder to a clerk in her mid-40s. "Ruth Lawson, deceased," I said. "I'm the executor." She typed into her system, "Any children?" "One, a daughter, Ashley Lawson." She typed again, then frowned. "I'm not seeing an Ashley Lawson in the system with your address." My stomach tightened. "That's impossible. Born March 14, 2004. She clicked a few more times. "Oh, here she is. Ashley Thompson. Date of birth, March 14, 2004. That's your daughter, right?" I froze completely. The air was sucked out of the room. "What did you just say?" "Thompson," she repeated slowly. According to our records, she filed an adult name change petition on January 23rd. It was approved 3 weeks ago. Can I get a copy of that?" I asked, my voice barely above a raspy whisper. Since I was listed as the biological father, it was public record. She handed me the printed document. I walked out to my car and sat in the freezing parking lot, staring at the paper. Requested name, Ashley Marie Thompson. Reason for change. Personal preference, personal preference. That was what she had written. Not an adoption. Not a legal necessity. Just a personal preference to completely erase my existence from her life. And at the bottom, where it said parent signature, it read NCA. She didn't need my permission. She had done it in secret, and she had gladly taken my $10,000 just days later. I drove home on complete autopilot. I sat at my kitchen table in the dark. My phone rang. It was Ashley. I didn't answer. A text came through immediately. "Dad, did you get my call? Rent's due tomorrow. Can you send it tonight?" Rent, of course. That was the only reason she ever called. I calmly opened my banking app. I pulled up my scheduled automatic payments. Parsons tuition. $6,500 Manhattan rent. $1,500 living expenses. $2 $100. I canceled all 3 of them. I permanently deleted the scheduled transfers. I put my phone face down on the table, poured myself a drink, and sat in the quiet dark. The next morning, Ashley called 4 times in a panic. I didn't answer. By the afternoon, there were 10 frantic texts. "Dad, what's going on? I need the rent money today, Dad, please." I didn't respond. 3 days later, Karen called and left a demanding voicemail. I deleted it. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Lawson, this is Jonathan Pierce, attorney for Karen Thompson. Please contact my office regarding an urgent legal matter." I completely ignored it. 2 weeks after I stopped paying, a certified letter arrived at my door. Summons, family court. Karen Thompson was officially suing me for abandonment of child support obligations and educational expenses. She was aggressively demanding retroactive payment for the withheld months, ongoing payments until Ashley graduated in 2025, and massive legal penalties. I read the letter twice. Then I picked up my phone and called Paul Jackson, the ruthless attorney who had handled my divorce. "Paul, it's Scott Lawson. My ex-wife is suing me for abandoning Ashley's expenses." "What happened?" Paul asked sharply. I looked down at the name change petition still sitting on my kitchen table. "My daughter legally erased me," I said, my voice turning to cold steel. "And I stopped paying. Tell me everything," Paul commanded. I laid it all out: the accidental discovery at the clerk's office, the personal preference reason, the immediate cancellation of the massive scheduled transfers. When I finished, Paul was quiet for a long moment, then he let out a sharp laugh. "Good. You have incredible leverage. Bring every single document to my office tomorrow. Bank statements, texts, receipts, the petition, everything." I met Paul the next morning in his sleek downtown Portland office overlooking the Willamette River. I brought 3 massive boxes of documents proving my 19 years of unwavering financial support. Paul spread it all across the conference table, working methodically for 2 hours. "You've spent over $800,000 on her," he finally said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Probably closer to $900,000. and she filed this name change behind your back. Can they legally force me to keep paying? I asked. No, Paul stated firmly. Oregon law does not mandate parental support for college expenses once a child turns 18. You've been paying entirely voluntarily, but Karen's lawyer will aggressively argue moral obligation. He'll claim you're punishing your daughter out of pure spite. And what do we argue? Paul leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. We argue that Ashley Thompson made a deliberate, calculated legal choice to completely sever her relationship with you. She didn't just change her name, she explicitly replaced you with Andrew Thompson. And Scott Lawson is absolutely not legally obligated to fund someone else's daughter. She's still my daughter, I whispered, the pain still raw. Is she? Paul challenged. According to the state of Oregon, she is Ashley Thompson. She made that choice. Stay absolutely firm. Do not answer her calls. Do not send a single dime. We are going to trial, and we will let the judge decide. I paid his $5,000 retainer on the spot. Over the next 2 agonizing weeks, Ashley called me 17 times. She left sobbing voicemails begging for the rent money, claiming her landlord was threatening eviction. Karen sent venomous texts accusing me of destroying my own child. I ignored every single one of them. Paul built an ironclad defense, compiling a timeline of my $800, Zio's own financial support versus Ashley's calculated betrayal. The trial was set for March 15, 2023, in Clackamas County Family Court. I sat at the defense table next to Paul. Across the aisle, Karen and Ashley sat behind their smug attorney, Jonathan Pierce. Ashley was wearing a modest dress, looking terrified. She couldn't even make eye contact with me. Judge Barbara Sullivan entered the courtroom, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she had absolutely zero patience for family theatrics. Jonathan Pierce delivered his opening statement, practically dripping with manufactured outrage. Your Honor, this is a case about a vindictive father who maliciously abandoned his daughter when she needed him most, leaving her facing eviction and forcing her to drop out of school, all because he was petty and angry about a simple name change. He cut her off knowing she had no other support. That is not parenting. That is spite. Paul stood up smoothly for his opening. Your Honor, Scott Lawson has paid over $800,000 to support his daughter. He has never missed a payment. But in January, Ashley legally changed her name to Thompson, explicitly erasing her father from her identity. Mr. Lawson discovered this entirely by accident. He simply decided he was no longer obligated to fund the extravagant lifestyle of someone who didn't want to be his daughter. Parental support for an adult is voluntary. Ashley Thompson made a choice, and so did Scott Lawson. The judge called Karen to the stand first. Pierce lobbed her easy questions, letting her paint me as a neglectful workaholic and praising Andrew as the real father who had always been there. Then it was Paul's turn to cross-examine. He walked slowly toward the stand. Ms. Thompson, you testified that the name change was entirely Ashley's decision. Is that correct? Yes. Karen lied smoothly. Did you tell Ashley that Andrew would only pay for her education if she legally changed her name? Karen's eyes flickered with panic. No, I don't recall saying that. Paul immediately pulled out his phone. Your Honor, I submit Exhibit A, text messages between Ms. Thompson and Ashley dated January 10th. Andrew is willing to help with Parsons, but only for family. His family? Paul looked up, his voice turning lethal. Did you or did you not heavily pressure Ashley into changing her name for financial gain? I was trying to help her, Karen shouted, her composure shattering. Scott wasn't paying enough. Yes or no, Ms. Thompson? Yes. Karen practically spit. And did you hide this from Mr. Lawson because you knew he would stop funding your scheme? Karen didn't answer. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Paul dismissed her. Then, Pierce called Ashley to the stand. My heart physically ached, watching her walk up. She looked so small. Pierce gently asked her why she changed her name. My mom said it was absolutely necessary for financial aid, Ashley whispered, crying. That Andrew would only pay if I was part of the family. I didn't want to hurt my dad, but I needed the money for Parsons. Paul stood up for cross-examination. He didn't raise his voice, but every word cut like a scalpel. Ms. Thompson, when did you realize that parental consent was not actually required for your name change? Ashley looked down at her shaking hands. February, 1 full month before this lawsuit was filed, Paul stated. And did you immediately call your father to apologize and tell him the truth? No, she sobbed. Why not? Because I was terrified he would be incredibly angry and stop paying my rent. Paul let the brutal admission hang heavily in the air. So, you explicitly knew that changing your name was a betrayal, but you kept it a secret because you selfishly wanted his money. You wanted the $500 a month more than you wanted to be honest with your father. Ashley was hysterically crying now. I didn't know what else to do. You could have told the truth, Paul said coldly. No further questions. Ashley stepped down, completely broken. The judge called a brief recess. I sat at the table, feeling absolutely no victory in destroying my own daughter on the stand. Just a profound, exhausting sadness. When court reconvened, I was called to testify. I swore on the Bible and sat down. The entire room stared at me. Mr. Lawson, Paul began, why did you stop paying? I looked directly at Judge Sullivan. Because for 19 years I was treated as nothing more than an ATM I paid for a $77 Zeros and birthday party, where I was forced to watch another man dance with my daughter. I paid for an elite education while she listed her stepfather as her emergency contact. And when my own mother died, Ashley didn't even bother to attend the funeral. When I saw that name change document, stating she erased me for personal preference, I finally realized the brutal truth. I was funding a life I was entirely excluded from, so I stopped. Pierce tried to aggressively cross-examine me, accusing me of being petty and vindictive, but I didn't flinch. I am not punishing her, I stated firmly. I am simply accepting the profound boundary she legally established. She is an adult. She chose her new family. I am respecting her choice. The trial concluded that afternoon. Judge Sullivan didn't even need to deliberate for long. This court finds no legal basis to compel Mr. Lawson to continue funding a highly extravagant lifestyle for an adult child. Judge Sullivan ruled, her gavel coming down with finality. Ashley Thompson made a conscious, legal choice as an adult. Mr. Lawson is absolutely not obligated to fund that choice. The plaintiff's motion is entirely dismissed. I won. Karen looked furious. Ashley buried her face in her hands and wept. I walked out of that courtroom and didn't look back. Without my $10,000 a month, reality hit Ashley like a freight train. Andrew conveniently, completely backed out of his promise to pay for Parsons. Karen couldn't afford the massive tuition on her teacher's salary. By August 2023, Ashley was forced to drop out of her dream school. She packed up her trendy Manhattan apartment and moved back to Oregon in complete disgrace. For nearly a year, I didn't hear a single word from her. I focused on rebuilding my own life. Diane, the incredible woman I had been dating, moved into my townhouse. We traveled. We cooked together. I finally felt a deep, abiding peace that had been missing for decades. Then in March 2024, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It was handwritten. Dad, I know I have absolutely no right to call you that anymore. But I needed to write this. Dropping out of Parsons was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I was furious with you at first, but without your money, I finally had to face reality. Andrew refused to pay a single dime. Mom blamed me for losing the lawsuit. I finally saw them for who they truly are. I've been working at Nordstrom in Portland for almost a year now. I make $19 an hour folding clothes. It's not what I thought my life would be, but it's teaching me brutal lessons Parsons never did. I've learned what it actually feels like to earn something. To pay rent, buy cheap groceries, budget for gas. I've learned that money doesn't just magically appear. For 19 years, you were the one bleeding for it, and I never appreciated it. I don't expect you to ever forgive me, but I needed you to know I am profoundly sorry. And I am desperately trying to be a better person. I read the letter 3 times. The first time, I felt that familiar, cold fury. The second time, I felt a twinge of sadness for the manipulated 19-year-old girl. The third time, I just felt incredibly tired. I showed the letter to Diane. What do you want to do? She asked gently. I don't know if I can ever go back to being her father, I admitted. You don't have to, Diane smiled softly, but you can decide to forgive her. Forgiveness is for you, Scott, not for her. You forgive so you can finally let go of the heavy rocks. 2 weeks later, I texted Ashley and agreed to meet her at Laurelhurst Park. She arrived exactly on time. She looked significantly older, her hair pulled back simply, wearing her Nordstrom name tag. She sat down nervously, leaving a wide, cautious space between us on the park bench. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice shaking. "I read your letter," I said. "I forgive you." Her breath hitched violently. "You do?" "Not for you, for me. I refuse to carry this toxic anger for the rest of my life." I looked her dead in the eyes. "But that absolutely does not mean we go back to how things were. I am not your ATM. I am not your backup plan. I will never fund your life again. I don't want your money," she cried, tears spilling over. "I just wanted you to know how deeply sorry I am." We sat in silence for a long time. "Does this mean we can talk again?" she whispered. "Sometimes," I said honestly. "We can grab coffee, we can see how it goes." We hugged awkwardly, like two distant strangers, but it was a small beginning. It is now 2026. I am 53 and I am entirely free. Diane and I are planning a massive, expensive trip to Italy this spring. For the first time in decades, my hard-earned paycheck belongs entirely to me. I save it, I invest it, I spend it on the people who actually respect me. Ashley is still working retail. She has impressively saved $25,000 on her own and is applying to a local public university for business administration. She is taking out loans and paying her own way. She is finally learning how to be a responsible adult. We meet for coffee, maybe 3 times a year. We split the check right down the middle. She doesn't call me dad, and we carefully avoid talking about the painful past. It is polite, distant, and exactly the boundary I desperately needed to set. If my excruciating story teaches you anything, let it be this: love without firm boundaries isn't love. It is toxic enabling. I spent almost $1 million trying to desperately buy a connection with a daughter who didn't respect me. You cannot buy love, and you certainly cannot force loyalty. If you are currently funding an adult child who treats you like an endless ATM, stop. Right now, you are not abandoning them. You are teaching them severe, necessary accountability. Boundaries are not walls. They are guidelines for respect. And if someone cannot respect your boundaries, they do not respect you. Let them go and reclaim your own life. Thank you for walking this brutal journey with me. Drop a comment below. If you were in my impossible situation, would you have ever forgiven Ashley? Have you had to choose between blind love and strict boundaries? Let's support each other in the comments. If this raw story resonated with you, hit subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Stay strong out there.